Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this special edition of the BNN podcast. This is your host, Ike O, and today I have such a special guest in the studio with us, um, Brianna Sewell. Um, Her story is phenomenal to me. It's very touchy, um, but you could sense the energy of the young lady as she begins. Let her introduce herself to our audience globally this morning or this afternoon or this evening, wherever you are. Go ahead, Bree.
Well, my name is Brianna, but I less formally go by Bree. I don't even know where to start. I think the best thing to know about me is that I was a nurse. I am a nurse, not was a nurse. I am a nurse, and I have kind of a crazy story. But my hope is that in sharing my story, it helps other people and their journey on their own path in healing. And it's so nice to be here and part of your show. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Bree, for making out time. Bree, I'm going to help you so we can go straight into the conversation we have today. Um, Back in 2020, your life was fine. You were living the life of a nurse and doing your thing. And then all of a sudden, somewhere around August 2020, am I correct?
Yeah.
Everything changed. Take your time and share that story um, before or after with our audience, if you don't mind.
Perfect. So I think the best thing to know and where to start is being a nurse is not what I did, but who I am as a person. And it's something I always knew. There's pictures of me at like the age of like 6, forcing my little cousins to be my patients. And I had made IV bottles with red food coloring for blood transfusions. I was very passionate at a young age about healthcare, and I always knew I was going to be a healer, whether that was going to be a doctor or nurse. I always knew that. I knew that in my soul, I think. And it took me a little bit longer than most. I did struggle until I got to my nursing program. And when I finally got in there, I soared. I went from being like a C+ student to an A+ student. I graduated at the top of my class. I was valedictorian. I graduated with academic merit and honors and on the dean's list. And I knew from that moment forward that like this was something I was always meant to do. And I was so proud of that. Up until that moment, it was the proudest moment of my life, walking across that stage, getting my pin in front of my family who had traveled very far to come and watch my graduation. And from that moment forward, my life was about to start. And I remember vividly thinking one day on my way to work, this is it. Like me, my boyfriend just bought our first house. I am finally a nurse. I'm in my career. I got a full-time job right out of school. Like, this is it. Life is just starting now, and it's finally here for me. And I was 27 by the time it started. Already, I thought it was much later in life than your life is supposed to start. Yeah. And I loved it. The thing about that is I was a new nurse in the end of 2019 going into 2020. And as you know, COVID started. And I was a nurse through some of the height of COVID, I would say, and especially where I worked. It was a very small rural hospital. And right away, when I started working there, I became part of this beautiful family that was there. It was small. So you got to know everyone very quickly, and they became my family. I saw them more than my real family, so they became my family, and why I showed up for them the way I showed up for them. There's something I truly believe, that everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that there is a reason for everything, whether it's good or bad, whether it is a lesson or something for you to learn along the way. And I also believe that there are signs, and everyone always says follow your gut, and that there are signs that maybe you should watch out for. If something is saying no, if you are late for work because you burn your toes, they say, okay, I'm late because I missed a car accident. I missed all those things. And one night I was on my night shifts, and there was a patient. He was in a state of delirium. And so he was in 2-point restraints, but we didn't have enough staff at the hospital. It was very small. So we only had me and 2 other nurses and 1 health grade. And traditionally, when you have patients in these types of restraints, there needs to be someone with them 24/7. Like, they can't be left alone, obviously, in case they need water or something. And the person that was watching them was leaving, and I heard him calling out. I was at the nursing station, so I approached the bed. And I told him who I was, what I was doing, and I was going to get him some water, and the water was next to his bedside table. I knew he couldn't see where he was, and I didn't want him to be alarmed or confused. And I walked up to him, but he was a very tall man, and he was able to draw his legs up. And I guess throughout this time, he had been wiggling in his restraints. And so he was able to turn his body ever so slightly. He drew his legs up and he kicked me in the stomach. I'm 5'1" for reference, and I was about 125 pounds at the time, and he was 6'5", I think, and almost 300 pounds. So I flew across the room. And it was like the most, like, it knocks the wind out of you, and I was instantly sore. And the doctor, who I referred to as my work dad at the time, said, like, you know what, kid, like, I'll write you a note, stay home tomorrow. Like, you shouldn't come to work tomorrow. And during night shifts, most healthcare workers will get this, that it's very hard to find someone to replace a shift. And it was even harder during COVID. And I remember waking up for my next shift, and getting out of bed was so hard. I was so sore, but it felt more like pulled muscles. And my boyfriend was like, you cannot go to work. You can barely move. What are you doing? And I'm like, once I'm standing, it's fine, because I saw my shift hadn't been picked up. And I knew that the ward was full. There was a lot of COVID patients, a lot of really sick patients, and we had no staff. And I wasn't about to leave my family left hanging. When I knew I was standing up, I was fine. And nurses don't really get to sit anyway, so I didn't think it was going to be a problem. And I remember going to start my car for that shift. My car didn't turn over the first 2 times. And I'm thinking, did I leave a light on? Did my battery die? Good thing my boyfriend's here, because I don't know how to jump a car or start a car like that. So it did end up turning over. And I think back on that now all the time, that those were the signs. That was a sign from God or the universe that I was not supposed to be on the road that next day. That some sort of higher power was trying to keep me at home, and I didn't. I went against every instinct, everything that tried. I went to work. And I went. My shift was relatively unremarkable. And the last thing I remember about being at that job actually was laughing with my nursing colleagues at the nursing station. And I think of that often, because that would have been the last memory they would have had with me, would have been joy and laughter. And I try to carry that into every situation now. If this is the last time someone is ever going to see me, whether I'm frustrated with them or not, or angry or not, I don't want the last thing for them to remember something poorly. And I think about that often now. And I remember walking outside, and the sky was this like beautiful blue. I live in Canada, and that already in August, mid to late August, it was already cold, but the sun was warm. And so I knew it was going to warm up to be like a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. And the irony in that now is surreal, because I just remember, like, this is going to be a beautiful day. I'm going to go home. I'm going to sleep for a little bit and hang out outside with Ryan. It's going to be a great day. Only about 10 to 15 minutes away from home, a reckless driver thought he could beat 4 lanes of highway traffic and sped out in front of me, and I T-boned him going 103 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
It's the next little bit of this story I can explain in great detail, but you have to imagine that this happened in seconds. The things that I'm about to explain happened in seconds after. And unfortunately for me, but fortunately for my life, I was lucid through the entire thing. I remember everything. I didn't get knocked out, though I should have. There are so many things that happened that day. Again, divinely orchestrated, obviously, to save my life, because there are certain things that are not to be explained, really. I remember seeing this white vehicle coming, and I was in the right-hand lane thinking, oh my, he's coming in here pretty quickly, but he must just be turning into the left-hand lane. And it was this flash of white and then red, and it was this impact. You have to imagine that kind of force coming to a dead stop was like getting hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. It was the most intense force that I hopefully will ever feel in my body again. And it was instant, like, I just got into a car accident. This just happened. And I remember wiping my hand down my head like this, like, okay, I don't see blood, no head injury. And the pain was instant. It was instant. And it is a pain I will never, not ever be able to describe in words. I've tried, and there will never be words to explain the pain that I was in. And it was instant. And I remember this smell, and it was smoky, and I couldn't really see. And it was like in the movies, my ears were kind of ringing, and everything was like a blur, but it was this smell. I'd never been in any sort of car accident. So I guess when the airbags deploy, it's kind of like an explosive kind of smell. And to me, I thought my car was on fire. So I'm like, I need to get out of here. I'm going to burn alive in here. I need to get out of here now. And my car was obviously on fire. I remember vividly trying to reach for the door handle and like being like, okay, I'm obviously in shock. I can't feel it. And then realizing door handle is much further back than where it's supposed to be. And my left leg was up here where I'm trying to reach behind because I had terrible leg cramps on my way home. So I drew my leg up. You're never supposed to drive with your feet on the seat. Friendly nursing tip. There's a reason they say do not drive with your feet on the seat, because if you get into an accident, it can break your pelvis. You can break your bones. Long bones are very vascular, and they bleed. And I knew better. I should have known better. And so right away, I tried to shove my leg down to try to get to the door, and the pain was just unimaginable. And I remember leaning to the side because then I'm realizing where the dash was. The steering wheel is into my chest, and I remember leaning, and I thought I was probably cut in half. That was the amount of pain I was in, and my arms were so heavy, and thinking then that I probably broke my pelvis now because of where my leg was. My arms are getting heavy because I'm probably bleeding internally now. And I can't breathe at this point. It is so hard to get a breath. And I remember trying to scream, and in my own ears, it was so muffled, and thinking, I'm going to die alone in here. And I remember just looking up at my cracked and broken windshield. And a few years prior, my papa, someone who was this pillar in our lives, who died very unexpectedly, way too soon, and is someone we always consider to be a guardian angel now. And clearly he was that day. And I remember throwing my hands kind of like some being, Papa, please don't let me die alone in here. And literally, as I said, die alone in here, as those words left my mouth, I heard the most angelic hello of my life. And to this day, it's something I didn't talk about early on because I didn't want people to think I was crazy, but that first hello was my papa's voice. That is what I heard. Oh. And as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm probably dying here now. And this man got in my car, and he's like, hello, my name is John. I'm here to help. And before I knew it, there was these hands on my forehead bringing me into the seat. So the force of the car accident cracked my seat. That's how much force there was. So it cracked my seat in the back here. So he was trying to push against the broken part and bring my head in. And he told me not to move. But at this point, I'm trying to like offload the weight like this off of my bum because the pain was so severe, and I thought it was my pelvis. And he was like, I need you to stop moving, and kind of explained who he was. And I remember putting my hands over his, and his hands were these strong working man's hands. And I'm thinking, this really is my papa. It's an angel. Like, maybe I'm not dying. I really am going to get saved here. There's so many things that go through your head, right? And then he must have saw my nurse badge on my bag. It flew to the front. He was like, you're a nurse. Tell me what you're feeling right now so we can help the emergency crews to get you out faster. And then I told him how I don't know what to say right now, but I'm in so much pain right now. And I was trying to grab my phone to call my boyfriend to say goodbye because I thought I was dying there. And I remember him taking the phone out of my hand, being like, that's okay. Where someone else will call him. Everything is going to be okay. He was so calm. He never once hurried his voice. He never once raised it. He was so calm. And he's like, what are you feeling? And so I just kind of listed what I thought could be wrong. Like, I think maybe I've punctured a lung. I can barely breathe right now. I'm in severe pain. I think it's my pelvis. I think I'm bleeding out. Like, I need help right now. And when EMS got there, they passed John through they broke this window, I think, and they passed him oxygen, and they put it on me, put a C-spine collar on me. But before that, John said something that at that point I think it was shock. I always just assumed shock was going to be this thing like I've seen in my patients. They don't realize their injuries because of how much shock has taken over. Shock kept me lucid. Me staying lucid is what kept me breathing. Me staying lucid is what kept me cognitive enough to be able to remain there. And I truly believe to this day, had I lost consciousness, I would have died there if it wouldn't have been for John knowing the severity of my injuries now. But I was lucid through this time now, and shock did all these things besides take away the pain, at least the severity in my lower back. But what I didn't realize is that I didn't feel my legs, because John asked when I said the pain was so severe in my neck and my lower spine, he was like, Brianna, do you feel your legs? And it's this moment of like, oh my God, no, I don't. Like, I don't know where they are. I saw one of them, but like, I think I'm wiggling my toes. I don't know if I am, and I can't see my other foot. I don't know if it's moving now. And he just kept telling me it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I remember them cracking my windshield, and it was this gust of fresh air. It was the most refreshing, almost full breath I've probably ever had in my whole life, in that cold morning air again filled my car. And I remember EMS trying their best to figure out how they were going to get me out. First, I think they thought they were going to cut the roof off my car, knowing that I couldn't feel my legs already. And I started to become very unstable, and they knew that. And they said, Brianna, there's no easy way for us to do this. We're just going to have to pull you out now. And so they used the jaws of life to crack open my driver's side door, and they grabbed my shoulders. And EMS had replaced where John was now. And when they twist me like this to pull me out, I thought I knew pain at that point until that moment. I'm like, I'm cut in half. They're ripping me apart right now. And I felt the clicking, the shifting. It was like click, click, click of my lower spine over the spinal board when they pulled me out. And that was the last full sensation, like full body sensation I had from about collarbone down. And when they pulled me out, I remember looking back up at that same big, beautiful sky again, except everything was quiet. There was no more sirens, no more people yelling. There was no more commotion. It was this blanket of peace that fell over me. It was warm, and it was like a heavy weighted blanket almost. And I knew then I was dying. I was accepting of it too. It's crazy at one point to be begging for your life, and then at the next point being thankful that it's over. The pain is done. If I'm dying now, I'm okay with it because the pain is done. And not long after that, I was brought back to reality by a paramedic who I knew was doing sternal rubs. And it's something we do in the ER. It's a pain response. If you push hard enough here, it helps like wake a patient up or keep them conscious. And she was just in my face, Brianna, keep your eyes open, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. And I remember going in the back of the ambulance now. And once first they she's got bruising on her pelvis. We need a pelvis binder. So I'm thinking, yep, broken pelvis. And I hear all this commotion. When they get the leads on me, I can hear all these machines behind me going crazy. And I remember asking, or thinking I'm asking, I'm a nurse. Tell me what you're seeing right now. What are my vitals? Like, what's going on? And none of them were answering me. Yeah. And I just remember hearing above my head, like, she is not stable enough. Stars needs to land now. She's not going to make it to the hospital for stabilization. For record, the hospital that would have stabilized me was not more than 3 minutes away from where the accident happened. They didn't think I was stable enough to make it from there to the hospital. So STARS is our air ambulance service, and they landed on the highway. They closed down the highway, and they landed right behind the ambulance. And they were so quick. They were so quick and so efficient. And I remember coming in there, and there was Jenny. I will never forget her because she spoke to me like I was still there. She just said, Brianna, my name is Jenny. This is what we're doing. We're moving you into STARS. It's going to take us approximately 10 minutes to get you to the trauma hospital. And she explained every step of the way. And there were moments where I remember her saying, oh, welcome back. And I'm thinking I was here the whole time, not fully understanding. And it didn't matter how much pain medication. I maxed out on fentanyl on that ride. I maxed out on morphine. They maxed me out on every pain medication for my body weight. And it did nothing. It did nothing. It's such a strange feeling to be able to explain to people. It was like this electric shock kind of feeling from my collarbone down, knowing I couldn't move anything because it was like so incredibly heavy. But the pain, I felt the pain. That is the one thing that made me so angry. Like, I can't feel my body, but I can feel this pain that's killing me right now.
So sorry for interrupting you, Brie. So what was actually taking place? You had broken your spine?
Yeah, so when they finally got me to the trauma hospital, they put me in the pan scan, and I came back out, and it was like a movie. There was people all around me, and I'm thinking, did they find a twin in there? What's going on? And during COVID, you're not allowed anyone. I was there all by myself until they realized the severity of my injuries, and they finally let my boyfriend in, and that's when they went through it all. They said, Brianna, you have broken your neck. You have a complicated C2 hangman fracture. You have dissected arteries in your neck. You have broken your spine in multiple places with crush and burst injuries throughout. So I broke my spine at T1, T2, T4, T11, and 12. And then my lumbar spine, my sacral spine. I broke ribs on my left side. I had a partial collapsed lung on the left side. Very severe concussion, TBI, broke bones. The force was so strong, it broke the bones in my inner ears, broke a bone in my mandible, and then obviously various cuts and that throughout my body, which were the very least of the injuries at that time. But they thought that I wasn't going to be stable enough for surgery. They thought between the dissected arteries and the severity of the break, and they knew then there was not a next stable bone to put a rod in my spine. There was nowhere next to stabilize. If they were going to put a rod from the back of my skull all the way to my tailbone. So I would have basically no movement for the rest of my life. And they decided to go with a halo. So a halo is like this medieval device. It screws into your head and 4 points into your skull, sits in a vest, and it's kind of like a cast. You can't take it off until your neck is healed. And that's what they decided to do. But at that point, I was in a pain crisis, and they didn't realize this yet, that my body obviously metabolizes anesthesia and pain medication way quicker. It's because I'm a natural redhead. Fun fact, that apparently is something that happens for redheads. And they tried to freeze me to put this halo on, but the freezing wasn't working. So I felt that first screw going through my skin into my skull. And it was the most torturous few hours of my life. And something that will stay with me like a scar on my brain, just as much as the physical scars got left in my body that day. And I just remember thinking, like, I just couldn't believe that this happened. You just don't believe those things can happen to you. And so that's when the fight started. That's when I knew that.
That is.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, sorry. That's fine. I'm not trying to interrupt you. I'm just mindful of our time. Man, just the experience of what you've gone through, what you went through at the moment. It's just, I'm listening to you. I'm like wondering, is this for real? And you are actually talking to me almost 5 years afterwards, or 4.5 years after you're having this conversation. It's just a miracle that you're actually here. With all those kind of injuries, it's a miracle. But there is someone out there who might be where you were in 2020 when your whole life changed, that is wondering, well, how did you come back from that? And I think we're going to use the next 8 minutes that we have, as much as we can, talk about not just the recovery from the medical standpoint, because I know that must have been a very powerful thing that's helped you, but also the mindset, the family love and care, and the low points that you must have had. Because I can bet my life that it wasn't a straight walk for you. It wasn't, I'll just go through it. And, there must be some times of depression, and you're asking, why me? And all those kind of questions. But at the end of the day, Bree, you're still here. You pulled off. You've mentioned Ryan a couple of times. I don't know who Ryan is, but he must be a great guy, because definitely he's still in your life, if I'm not mistaken.
He proposed to me in the hospital, actually. He proposed to me, and then
he had to be a great guy. So that's good. So wherever you are, kudos from the BNS family. Yeah.
Yes.
How do you overcome mentally and emotionally those challenges? Because someone needs to hear that story and get some kind of hope to go through where they are.
I think it's important to know, like, it's easy to hear the trauma, and the trauma that I endured after was probably mentally far worse than that physical trauma. The fighting with insurance, fighting with the medical system, fighting to just live, the toll that took on my mental health. I often say my physical recovery was the easiest part of this journey. The physical recovery was the easiest part. And I like to be able to tell people, like, I think they hear these inspiring stories and think, like, they look at their own story and think, like, I'm never going to get there. Healing is hard. I don't want people to think healing is easy, because it's not. Healing is hard. And the hard part was my mental health. In my valedictorian speech for graduating, I talked about support system. It's one of the very first things we learn about in nursing, that a support system can make or break a recovery. And I'm very blessed that I have an amazing support system. And I often attribute a lot of my success after this to them, because I had so many people to lean on during that time. And there were times after, though, when my mental health, it struggled immensely. I went through very deep bouts of depression. And I have a blog where I talk about that I struggled to the point of suicidal ideation. I lost everything. Everything I thought I was, who I was, what I was supposed to be in this world, what I was supposed to accomplish, gone. In less than 4 seconds, it was gone. And everything I thought I could get back, no matter how hard I fought for it or tried, it felt like failure after failure. Though I know they weren't failures on my own now, it felt like my own. And as someone who struggles with failing at any capacity, it was too much. It did become too much at one point. But there has to be this realization too. In these dark points, yes. It's just that thinking of everything happens for a reason, Brianna. You know that medically speaking, I should not have lived. I should have had a massive stroke. That the section of my artery should have left me with a massive stroke. I should have bled out. I should have been a complete quadriplegic. I'm an incomplete one because John saved my life. John was not supposed to be there that day. John was not supposed to be there, and he only knew to stabilize my neck because he broke his neck in a motorcycle accident a few years prior. We call him Angel John for a reason. There are so many things that divinely lined up that day to keep me here that I can't give up now. I can't give up now. And it's realizing now, it's taken me almost 5 years to get to this point now to know that though my life has profoundly changed in ways that have at times felt like it destroyed me, times that it felt like it tore me apart at my core, I had to have my life completely leveled to the ground to start to rebuild, to know that I can still have a very impactful and still a very profound life in this world, and I can still accomplish great things. And life is not about the things that you have around you. Life is not about what you think you can accomplish and think you can do and have. Life is what you make it. And if I decided to make my life this prison that I felt I was in, it was going to be a prison for the rest of my life. So I had to look beyond that. I had to look at what was still possible, what was still available to me. And I made sure over the last 2 years now that I lived again. Everything that I thought wasn't possible again, I showed myself it was. Did it look different? Yes, it did. But I did it. And sometimes you have to do hard things scared in order to see you still can do them.
That's correct.
And that is exactly what I did. You have to push yourself outside those comfort zones to really experience life again. And that's what I had to do. I've become very uncomfortable in my life to be able to do great things and to feel pride and joy in things that I didn't think I could. And it's hard. Healing was hard. Mental health is physical health. Mental health is health. And if I didn't take care of that early on, if I didn't fully immerse myself in what that healing looked like, I don't think I would be here today. If I wasn't as vocal about my struggles, I don't think I would be here. And if I didn't push myself to be better, to know that life can still go on, that everything does happen for a reason, then maybe I still wouldn't be here. But I'm very glad that I stayed. I'm very glad that I pushed myself. And I think now my reason for this is I was gifted with an incredible voice and a very good mind still. And that's one thing that the accident did not take from me. And to be able to share my story now and hopefully be able to show people that life can still go on after catastrophic events. It doesn't even need to just be a physical trauma. Lots of people go through really big traumas in their life that are mental for them, but life can go on after that. And
so you said sorry for interrupting you again, Brie. So you said you learned how to voice out your struggles.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that? How did you go about doing it? I need the folks to walk away with at least one thing that they can say, this is what Brie taught me in her own journey. The stories are powerful. Obviously, the essence of making sure that one's mental health is in place.
I think when I would see other influencers online and people online talking about like, oh, well, I'm okay now kind of thing, thinking, how did you get okay though? Exactly. Because I know I'm not okay. And the moment I opened up the real part of the journey, not just the inspiring part, the positive side of Brianna, the real part, the deep parts, the flow that came back to me, I experienced something similar. I'm so glad you're talking about this. I have no one else to relate to about these things. And you realize in that moment, you are not alone. That's you correct. Can feel as alone as you are. I thought there was no one else. No one else has really been through what I've been through. Yes, there's other people who've been in terrible situations, but my struggles have been my own. And I don't know that I can talk about them because no one else is going to know what that feels like. The moment I did, there was probably, I think we counted, it was like 189 messages that came through that day.
Wow.
And it was the impact in that one moment that I had to realize that as alone as I feel, I have to know that there's probably 1 million more people who feel the way I do. And in that moment, there became this community support that I didn't know I had. And that support system went from my family, went to people that I never even thought I could reach. And they became just as much as my support system as I became theirs. And I was able to pull from them strength that I didn't know I could have. And they were able to pull from me. And it's just knowing that you can feel like you were the only one in the room with your problems. But I promise you that if you open up about that in the most genuine way possible and open up and don't hide it. Don't be performative. Don't try to think you have to sugarcoat it for anyone because it wasn't sugarcoated for you. What your struggles are, you didn't get it sugarcoated for you. So why are you having to sugarcoat it for everyone else? I thought that if I kept telling everyone I'm fine or, oh, it's not that bad, like, oh, it sucks, but I'm here.
Yeah.
It did nothing for me, but everything for everyone else. And it spared them the discomfort and it left me still discomforted. And the moment I gave my true discomfort out and I told people, one, it was very healing for me to let people know what I was truly feeling. It was that they got to see what I was really going through. And in that moment, that genuine, that authenticity was reciprocated back to me in ways that hadn't been over for those first few years anyway. And you are truly never alone. When they say that, I know it seems like just a general statement, but I promise you that you are never alone. No matter how crazy your situation is, I promise
you're never alone. There are people out there who are going through the same thing. That when you started speaking up, like you said, it inspired them to also speak up. They could connect, they could relate. I think God, in His infinite wisdom, has a way of putting these things together. And you'd be surprised, folks who are across the Atlantic from where you live. You're in Toronto, if am I correct?
Manitoba.
Okay, Vancouver. Okay, so but it's Canada, correct?
Yes.
There you go. So okay, so now and then you find out the injuries you have in your situation could be as bad as someone who is all the way in the Ashanti village of Ghana, or someone who's in somewhere in Doha, Qatar. This life just connects everybody together just because you opened yourself up. And I pray that this platform uses this story that you just shared with us to inspire someone else. Because there's a young lady, a young guy, an older man, an older woman, there's a John, who's going to be able to step up and save someone else just by saying, hey, I might not be able to move as I used to move before, but if I share my story and it brings some kind of comfort to you and some kind of hope that you can recover from this, then Bree, you're on the right track, fulfilling purpose and destiny. I know I run out of time. That's one thing about this podcast that I have to work on, but I know there's much more that you haven't told us yet, and we're going to try and see how we can bring you back and share some other components. But before you leave, just look at the camera and pretend as if you have the whole world listening to you at one time, and just speak your heart to everyone else who might be in a situation or going through some kind of trauma, and share whatever's in your heart to them, please.
I think what I would like people to know that, again, healing is hard. They make it seem like the healed product of you is the easy thing. Getting there is hard, but you can do hard things. Every hard thing up until that point you thought you couldn't get over, you did. That's how you got to that point. Healing is hard, but you've done hard things, and you are never alone in those hard things. And I promise you that it does not matter how big or small that trauma is, that there is life after that. There's life after catastrophic injury. There is still meaning and purpose. There's a reason why you're here and the reason why you stayed after those things. And my hope is that you know that you're never alone, and that opening up about those things seems scary, but the reward in that after, knowing that you have a support system that maybe you didn't think you had, is there, and to not give up. There will be 1,000 times in your journey where you're going to want to give up, and I promise you the reward to not will be far greater than any trouble or any part of the hard journey it was to get there.
Wow. Thank you so much, Bree. Bree, we have this thing that we do on our podcast. It's called a drop-off question. So the last guest who was on the show would drop off a question, not knowing who the next guest is going to be, whether it's a he, she, whether it's tall, short, female, male. They don't know what part of the culture of the world they come from, but they just ask a drop-off question. Now, I'm reading the drop-off question that they dropped, the last guest dropped, and I'm like, Bree, this question is so you that I bet you'll be able to answer it in a heartbeat. Okay. But then after that, you have to drop off a question for our next guest, whoever the person is. So start thinking about your question, and I'll read out the last one. It says, have you ever had a reason to regret an action, and how did you resolve it? Have you ever had a reason to regret an action, and how did you resolve it?
I think for a long time, I regretted going to work that day. I regretted going against what the universe had put out for me and what was trying to keep me at home. I regretted not following my gut and everything against there. But if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have ended up here. And somehow in this part of I thought I was supposed to be a nurse. I thought healing only came from bedside care, and that was the only way I was going to be able to make change in someone else's life. And through this, I have been able to reach millions of people now and help millions of people where I wouldn't have before. So it's hard to regret something that has been able to help so many lives. Yes, it impacted my life, but it's also impacted other lives so positively. So I did regret it for a long time. I did, but now I know that was part of my plan. It's part of what was always supposed to happen, I guess. If I was going to go against the signs of the universe, this was supposed to be the outcome for me. So I don't regret it anymore.
That's good. And you've used your platform to resolve it, because now you're using that platform to reach mediums. Well done, Bree. Well done. Now it's your turn. What would be the drop-off question? Anything. It could be anything. Doesn't have to be deep. Anything that comes to your mind, and the next guest will have to answer it.
What was the hardest part of their journey, and what did they do to be able to overcome that part?
What was the hardest part of their own journey, and what did they do exactly to overcome it? Wow. Okay. So whoever you are, next guest on the BNS podcast, that's Bree putting it out there for you. She's saying, what was the hardest part of your journey, and how were you able to overcome? Bree, thank you so much for making out time to speak to us and the rest of the BNS family, wherever the world. I know people are going to come back. Where can people find you to follow you? Are you on Instagram or any social media platforms, please?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and I'm on TikTok and YouTube. There's lots of places to reach me. I can give you my handles after if that works for you, and if you plug them in somewhere. I'm not sure if that works for you, but yeah.
Go ahead. Can you mention one of the handles so they can go from here?
Yeah, it's Brianna Sewald. That's just my Instagram. So BriannaSeewald. And that's how you'll find me on Instagram. And then you'll have all of my links, everything in there from
Yes.
the YouTube to my blog to everything else going on.
Thank you so much, Bria. Please send a big send our love to Ryan if he's still in the picture. And tell him he's.
I carried him, yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Great. And then the rest of the family, thank you so much for making out time to be with us.
Thank you for having
follow
us.
us on social media platforms. Go to our YouTube, Instagram, anywhere there's a social interaction. The BNS podcast is there. And in our own special way of ending our show, we wish you much love, much peace, and more grace. Brianna, thank you for being here today, and God bless.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys next week, Sunday. Cheers. Bye.